Well, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has been invited to a meeting by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe, Mapisa-Nqakula, and Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Amos, Masondo. This follows his comments this week in which he accused Parliament of failing to act on the findings from the State Capture Commission. A year after submitting the State Capture Commission's final report, Zondo said nothing has changed and that he fears a Parliament is incapable of preventing another bid to capture the state. Well, political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe joins me now for analysis on the latest developments. Prof, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on the Weekend Report. A year later, indeed, the Chief Justice is arguing that very little has been done since he submitted that final installment. Moreover, he says very little has been introduced by way of evoking change within Parliament to ensure that another state capture era doesn't come about. What do you make of those remarks?
First of all, the Chief Justice has every right to express his views, and also that he may as well be correct in his assessment of progress or lack of with regard to his recommendation. What has raised concerns is that he has chosen a particular platform to express that. And this has invited a backlash and has been slammed by political parties, especially people like Gwede who has also weighed in. But we need to go back to the drawing board. One of the first things that we know, and this is what Chief Justice should also know, that when you get into that public space, you are also going to invite a public debate. What we know is that judges speak through their reports and their findings or rulings. And once they've done that, they don't go around pontificating in every platform or stock fair about their judgments as if their judgment have to be defended. And when Chief Justice enters this space, he should know that there will be a response. Secondly, the Chief Justice has also not told us the whole story. At the moment, there are review applications to set aside some of his recommendations. So sometimes one could argue that the failure for Parliament was to move, or the executive to move. It may be that it awaits the conclusions of those review applications. And one of the persons who had approached the court to review the findings and recommendations is Mr. Machelakoko. He has been very clear that as of now, the Commission has not even filed a response to his application, almost suggesting that the Commission is delaying hearing his name because the findings were themselves very problematic. And we also know other people have actually dismissed the recommendations and findings as rubbish. So one must understand that the report as it stands is not without a challenge. So until that process is actually done and the courts have dealt with it, it may be wise for the Chief Justice to find another platform to raise that, because as the Parliament has also responded that he belongs to another arm of government or the state, and it will be important for him to respect other arms and to engage them in mechanisms and platforms that have been made available. And that explains why the Speaker of the House has actually invited him for a discussion around this lack of progress, and also to give him a sense of where the frustration is. But one can understand that given that so much money has been spent, people would like to see that the money was well spent and it was worth it. Right. But when there's lack of progress, then it creates a problem. But the most important thing, when matters are before the courts, there is something called sub judice rule. And people have expected that the Chief Justice will also not be among those who compromise matters that are before the courts that deal with the very subject that is raising in a public space.
Okay. All right. Well, Prof, you raised the point that The report itself, as it stands, is not unimpeachable. There are areas of it that are still requiring some answers, at least. And so we understand that. But you raise a very important point when you say, billions of rands were poured into this Commission of Inquiry. South Africans watched for 4 years. Numerous witnesses get pulled before the Commission of Inquiry to answer to these questions of the potential capturing of the state. And so what should we say to those South Africans? What exactly is working if the report itself is being deemed as, not unimpeachable, not as sacrosanct as we would like to think it is? It's got holes in it. There are still some unanswered questions. They're creating the impression that this process is actually far from actually being over.
I think we need to understand also that the commissions of inquiry are often used to try to understand issues that affect society with a view of trying to remedy and prevent them from happening. But once you weaponize a commission, once a commission becomes an instrument that is used in terms of crime and the court process, then you run the risk of the courts having to continuously engage on the matter on whether the statements that were made and the conclusions were valid in themselves. Remember, the recommendations of the commissions are not necessarily binding. They are there to assist the executive and society to say, how do we move forward? But once you have weaponized them, you can rest assured that most of those recommendations are going to be subjected to the court process. So it is how we have used this commission as a way of finding what you call the demons and the villains so that we can deal with them. This is why the affected people are saying the Chief Justice will meet them in court. Because you must also understand that the manner in which the commission conducted its processes does not withstand the rigor that you would find in a court, where people will be represented, where they be questioned, cross-examination, and counter presentations.
Right.
So one must understand that it is for that reason that the affected people says, we will meet Chief Zondo in court, and he must stop pontificating about his report in public, because when he does so, he compromises the court processes and also invites a political backlash.
Right.
But what it also means that he cannot be seen to be a partial person when these matters come before the courts.
So, here's the other thing, right? Are the concerns around Parliament's ability to stave off another state capture completely misplaced? This is a Parliament and a National Assembly that we have seen multiple times sort of hamper investigations into allegations of corruption. We saw it taking place when Parliament essentially refused to establish an ad hoc committee to look into allegations of corruption at ESCOM. We saw it again when the ANC majority Parliament voted against the establishment of a Section 89 committee to further look into impeachment proceedings against the president. And so we do have a Parliament that, if we look at it historically, hasn't really been at the heart of upholding accountability when we're looking at allegations of corruption. So is the concern completely misplaced in this instance?
I don't think so, and I think the instances that you cite speaks to a reasonable doubt that the Parliament would actually rise to the expectations that the Chief Justice has. And like I say, he has every right to raise those issues, but what he needs to also understand that there is a manner and platforms that would be most suitable for engaging on these matters, only when that fails. But when Parliament says, we may not have moved forward because your report is subject to judicial review. So are you saying we must ignore that process? And we also expect the Chief Justice that when there is a review of his findings and reports, that he must respect the court process as a judge. He cannot be the one who goes around defending in public. And as he was reminded by Julius Malema, that judges are known or speak through their reports and their findings. And imagine if former Chief Justice Mokgwenyane were to spend most of his time talking about his judgment, or a matter that involves the Parliament at the moment, where the former Chief Justice in Novo would actually be doing the same thing, defending his own findings. But what judges do, they simply say, we have written the report. It's up to other people to adjudicate. And if this is found wanting, there is a judicial process that the affected people can take to respond to what they find to be improper.
All right. Well, Prof, thank you so much for your insights. We'll leave our conversation there for now. That's a political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe.